Welcome to the Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Nadia Dela Cruz, founder of the Wayne Dyer Wisdom Community on Facebook and angeltarot.org. This podcast would not be possible without support from loyal fans like you. I want to thank everyone who has joined me on Patreon. You can sign up now for exclusive bonuses, including access to the full video for this episode. You'll find that link and more details at nadiadelacruz.com. Now, my guest today has had a love for music and singing since childhood. In the 1980s, after writing a song inspired by one of his teachings, she got connected with Dr. Wayne Dyer. They quickly became friends as he offered encouragement and advice through many phone conversations. Dr. Dyer wrote about her in his book, You'll See It When You Believe It, explaining how she manifested the funding to record her first album. She went on to perform her music around the Northwest and in her hometown of Chicago, with trips to Detroit and California to sing with Dr. Wayne Dyer. She also works as a life coach, offering services to guide and support your journey in life. Bobbe Branch, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so glad I can be here. It's really going to be fun to talk about Wayne and all the gifts that he gave to me and he gives to so many people still.
He's still bringing us together. I'm still learning from his teachings each and every day. When we first spoke, you mentioned that he wrote about you in You'll See It When You Believe It.
Yes.
And I was so excited because this was the first book. Oh, you have the same one.
I do.
I have multiple copies, Bobbe. I have many. This is a signed version. This one was not signed to me. It says Sharon. Thanks for everything, love and light, Wayne Dyer. But I still love it.
Yes, yes.
So, this was my first book that I read from Dr. Wayne Dyer. And as I was preparing to talk to you today, I was rereading some of it, and it just got me feeling that same excitement that I felt when I was a teenager back in the 90s, reading this for the first time, and it just felt revolutionary and inspiring. And now, having seen sort of the context of his life and how things evolved, and I've done a lot of research into all of his stories and everything, and when I look back on it now, I feel like this was such an exciting time for him. He was married to Marcy, he was having babies, his career was booming. This was his first book talking about spirituality, so he was studying something new that he was passionate about. And I feel like this was sort of a midpoint in his career, and it was just this moment of growth. And this is the book that I recommend most to people. You'll see it when you believe it.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, partly for personal reasons, because it was my first, and my copy was the paperback that looked like this one, and I highlighted.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I highlighted the whole thing basically, and then gave it away, and. I know, now I'm like, I wish I still had it, but you know what? It ended up where it needed to be, so I've got copies.
You've got more.
I also recommend it because it's such a good introduction to spirituality. And he's the one who led me down that path. So to talk to you, Bobbe, who
Yeah.
I reached out to in the group because you mentioned that you wrote a song inspired by one of his teachings. And we're talking, and they're like, oh yeah, he mentioned me in his book. I was like, oh, you'll see it when you believe. Oh, that means that I've read about you, and
You have.
now I'm putting the pieces together. So he talks about you in chapter 4 of You'll See It When You Believe It, which is all about abundance.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Yep.
And I'd love to start by reading a little excerpt of what
Sure.
he says about you.
Sure.
Okay. I have a dear friend named Bobbe Branch who lives in Wenatchee, Washington. She is a spectacularly alive, higher consciousness person who's a true joy to be around. Bobbe is a very talented singer and songwriter. I invited Bobbe to sing her beautiful music at some of my speaking engagements. In spite of her fears, she performed beautifully to standing ovations and began focusing on what she could do, rather than what she felt was impossible or difficult.
So true. So
Yeah.
true.
So how did you first get connected with Dr. Wayne Dyer?
Well, it's interesting because I knew of Wayne before I really started reading his books. We were listening, my then husband and I, Michael, we were listening to Nightingale Conant tapes. We had all his tapes that he did for
Hmm.
Nightingale Conant. And he was a chiropractor naturopath. And so he would make sure that the people that came to him as a new patient would take a Wayne Dyer cassette with 6 or 8 tapes in it home with them. He thought it was so important to listen to that as he worked on them. And so we had listened to all of his tapes, and I had seen him when I was younger in Chicago. I lived in Seattle at that point. When he was on Johnny Carson. I remember him on Johnny Carson being so
Yeah.
funny and so clever and
Yeah.
thinking, wow, this man talks about something that I have a resonating energy to, but I didn't know how to put it into words. And but I knew that he was on to something and a way of being that was I wanted more of. And so we've been listening to him for years, and the last thing he said on one of those tapes was, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. And that just really sparked me. And I had been singing all my life other people's songs. And I had been searching spiritually and starting to meditate and do things that were going inward. And I, of course, was in the Northwest where it's so beautiful. And we had lived in Seattle, and then we moved to Wenatchee. And I used to go back and forth over the mountains. And this one time, I went to the top of Blewett Pass, which is a beautiful pass. And I stopped, parked the car, went up in the trees, and meditated. And as I was meditating, I was like, wow, I really feel connected more than ever. And I wonder, this thought came, I wonder if I could write a song. And I thought, wow, that's a big thought because, people who write songs, I've been singing them all my life. They're amazing. And I thought, but let me try and what could I use? Because I knew people had to have hooks for grabbing people and themes and songs. And I thought of Wayne, and there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. And I said, that'd be a great hook. And so I came down, got into my car, and I thought, all right, I'll try. I'll just try to write a song. If nothing comes out, okay, I guess I can't do that. In 15 minutes, I had a melody and I had the song. It
Wow.
was like I had to pull over to write down because I couldn't remember the words. And and I had the chorus, I had the hook, I had all of it. And when I got home, it took about another 30 minutes to get home from there. And when I walked in, I said to my husband, I want to sing something for you, and I don't want you to tell me if you like it. And he was very agreeable about things like that. And he said, okay. So I sang it for him, and he said, nothing. And I said, good. And we went and did other things. And then about 15 minutes later, I said, okay, now I'm ready to hear if you thought it was any good. And he said, it was beautiful. And I said, yeah, but you love me. So, you'd think anything I did was really good. So then I called my daughter, who was in University of Illinois in Champaign, and I said, I wrote a song. I want to sing it for you. And so I sang it for her, and she said, oh, I really like that, Mom. That was really good. And and the next day she called me and she said, Mom, I really liked your song. I was humming it. I was singing it in my head. It's really got a ring to it. And I thought, huh. And so then my husband said to me, you need to record that. Now remember, we're back in 1986. And
Mm.
so he said, record it on a little cassette a cappella and send it to Wayne. And I said, oh, really? I wanted it to really sound great, if I was going to do that. And that's the performer in me. And so I thought, oh, what have I got to lose? So I recorded it on a little cassette, and I told him all about how, his thoughts kind of connected me. And like a week went by, and I got this box from Wayne Dyer with like 6 different books in it and a letter, and keep doing it. It's wonderful. And that was the beginning of our connection.
Wow.
And then after that, I would write to him, and then he'd send me back things. And then it just kept continuing. And I was going between Wenatchee and Seattle almost weekly to sing different places, churches and things, not my own music, just to sing. And because I'd lived in Seattle for a long time, and I had a business there. I had a catering business there too. And every time I went over the pass in the next like 3 months, I would write another song. And soon I had like 11 songs. And Wayne sent me a couple more packages of books and things. And he sent me a cassette tape of music for Icus on piano by a man named Jim Bajer. Beautiful pianist. But he didn't write music with vocals. He just wrote beautiful music. It was the most beautiful melody. And I got it. And I just kept hearing it in my head. I kept playing it. And so I got up. I kept thinking, I can put words to that. And so I went to bed one night. I would get up at 2 and 3 in the morning sometimes and write music now. After that. And at 3 in the morning, I was just up. You know how Wayne talks about 3 in the morning, it's that
3:13.
Yep. And so I got up and I was playing the music. And by the time my family got up, I had written Icus, the song that I eventually recorded. And he said, oh, you have to call Wayne and tell him all about it. And I said, okay, I can do that. So I thought, okay, I don't have music to go with it, but I have Jim's music. So I put Jim's music on a cassette, and I called him, and then I sang with the music in the background. I sang the whole song to him. And Wayne, he can be irreverent sometimes, right? And he said to me after that, he said, Bobby, no one has ever called me and sung a song just for me over the phone. It's better than an orgasm. And I said, okay. And
Thanks, Wayne.
Yes, I think you liked it. And he said, you need to call Marcy right now. And he gave me her number. She's at home. I'm at the office. You need to call her and you need to sing it for Marcy. And I said, okay. So I called her and I sang it for her over the phone. And he said, you got to record that. And I said, okay, I want to. I want to record all of them. I've got all these songs tumbling out of me. And so I began thinking about how was I going to do that. And as I was thinking about it, I wanted to have a good producer because I write the music, but I don't write it out in notation. And so I thought, and I play piano, but I didn't want to play piano on it. And so I said, I'm going to have to raise some money. I don't have the cash to do that. But I just on a fluke, I called a studio in Redmond, Triad Studios, and I said, I need to talk to an engineer, someone, just to ask how much funding I need to do something like this. And they said, oh, you need to talk to Larry Nefsker. You need to talk to him. So he called me and I talked and I told him what I had. And he said, yeah. He said, you need to talk to Danny Deerdorf. And Danny Deerdorf had recorded and was in the Northwest. And I had heard some of his music on the radio. And so I said, all right. So I called Danny and we talked. And he said, I want to meet with you. I want to hear what you've got. And so I went into Seattle and I met with him. And Danny had polio as a young man. And so he was in a wheelchair. And when I opened the door, he came in this electric wheelchair. And I said, oh. And he said, yeah. People kind of are surprised when they see me. And I said, well, your music is just not handicapped at all. And it's not in a wheelchair. And he said, no, it's not, is it? And I said, no. And so I sang some of the songs and stuff. And he said, yeah. He said, I'd love to produce your tape. And I said, okay, how much, et cetera. And so we looked at how much, the engineers, studio time, all of that. He said, about $15,000. And I said, okay. And I didn't have that kind of funding. And so I said, so I'll be in touch with you. And he said, okay. So that's when the conversations with Wayne started about abundance. And so I would call him and we'd talk like on a Wednesday evening. I'd catch him and we'd talk and I'd say, I don't know where that money's going to come from. And then he would just talk and he'd say, Bobby, I want you to do this for a week. I want you to go around and all week long, I want you to just think when you think, oh, I can't afford that. Oh, no, I can't buy that. I want you to think, I choose not to buy this. Of course I could buy it. I choose not to buy that right now. So we went through very basic things. And then one day he said to me, the money is all around you. And I was like, I believe you, Wayne. I really believe that, that is so true, and I can't find it around me. I just can't find it. And we had talked about his, you have to think that it's already here. Mm-hmm. And so every morning and every night, the last thought I would have is I would see Danny, the producer. I would see me at the bank with $15,000, putting the money in the bank, going over to the payphone. We didn't have cell phones then, calling Danny and saying, I've got the funding, let's go. And he said, just every time you think about it, just morning and night, first thing you think of, last thing you think of. That's what you want to think about. And I did that, and the money didn't appear. Poof. And we kept talking, and I kept saying, I'm getting closer. I could feel that. And the songs were just tumbling out. I even did a small little concert at somebody's house. And and so there was lots of energy around it. And then one night, Michael and I were sitting, and I said, what if we each take a piece of paper and we put it down and we just get a pen and we start thinking of people who might want to invest in me and my music. And he said, okay, I'm game. And I said, so let's just, and the rule is, if you think of them, you cannot start saying things like, oh, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. You think of the name, you write it down. He's like, okay, let's do it. So we sat and we got very quiet. And in the next 10 minutes, we had 20 names written down between the two of us. Mm-hmm. And some names, I'd think of them and I'd think, and then I'd say, the rule, write it down. Mm-hmm. So the next day I went to his office early, and there was one of the people we had written down was there, and she had just had a treatment from him. And I said, let me sneak into the room and talk to her. And I went in and I said, my music. Actually, I'd had a concert at her house. I said, you love my songs. And I said, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to get the funding. And, you know, here's the deal. If you want to invest in me, I will take anything from 100 to 1,000 or more. And you could invest in me. I will do a contract with you and I will pay you back. And she said, stop. And she said, I'm going to go to the bank right now. And she went to the bank and she came back like 15 minutes later, and I had my first check for $1,000. And I said, woohoo! And in the next few days, I just called people, and some people said no. Some people, just said, no, not at this time. I love your music. Yeah, I can't do that at this time. In 3 days, I had $15,000.
Wow.
There was no GoFundMe then.
Yeah.
There was nothing like that.
It was
And
go call me.
it was go
Yeah.
call me. So I had the money and I called Danny and then we started recording. And meanwhile, Wayne had flown me out to Detroit, to the Unity of Detroit, because he was going to be there speaking, and I sang Icus with Jim Bajer. He was there.
Wow.
And so I got to sing that. And it was, and that
I
was.
wish I was there.
I know. I wish
No,
you
what
were
a
there
magical moment. Yeah.
Oh, it was great, and it was like a dream and a reality all at the same time. And then I started recording. We recorded in like 7 days. It was like so fun. I brought flowers and crystals. I was just the weirdest recording artist that ever hit Triad Studios. And Danny was amazing, and I had great pianists and flute players and drummers, and it was just a fabulous, fabulous time. I wish I could do it, more often. It was just so much fun. And so then I had to get cover art and pictures and all these things. And it was all on cassette. And then I had to order the cassettes. And then Wayne bought 300 cassettes. And I gave him the wholesale price. And he sent them out all over the world to people.
Wow.
And then he said, make up a flyer. Just tell everybody, make up a blurb about how I love your music, and just sign it Wayne Dyer, and I'll just include it in everything I send out to people. And so
Wow.
I sent him like 500 flyers with my name on it and a little thing about the music, and he sent it everywhere. I got orders from Scotland and New Zealand and Japan and you name it, all over the place. And that was the first tape. And then I sang in Portland with him, and then I sang in Santa Cruz. That was in 1987. And it was so delightful to connect and share my music. And he told me, he said, sing anywhere you can. Sing it on the library steps. Just sing. So I did. I just started singing. And the friendship continued, and he was just always super supportive. And then I called him one time, and he said, oh, I'm writing about you. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, you're going to be in my next book. And I said, really? And so I have all the letters that we wrote. I have like 10 letters from him for the different times. Yeah. And it was a super magical time. It was a super magical time. And so I was in his book. It was like bizarre. And and then I watched him over the next years. That spiritual part of him grew and grew and grew. And we would hit many of the same places. He would be working on something, and then even my divorce from my second husband, we did it around the same time. He and Marcy separated. I separated and went off and did things too. And it was fascinating how our lives always seem to parallel.
What an exciting journey. I mean, just
Yes.
all of that. And I
Yes.
can see why Wayne was drawn to you. I can see why he sort of latched on and held on to you,
Yeah.
because you have this energy that's so beautiful, first of all,
Thank
but
you.
you bring this universal yes,
Yes.
which is what he was trying to teach us to
He
do. So
was.
he
He
used
was.
you as this example of, look what happens when you choose to say yes. And when I hear you telling this story, I see this pattern of courage.
Mm.
Courage.
Mm.
Could I? Could I write a song? Well, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I have this. Okay, I'm going to sing it to my husband. But it's really scary because I don't know how maybe it doesn't sound
Yeah.
as good
Right.
outside of my head. So you didn't want your husband to respond at first, right? But
Right.
courage, you sang it to him. All right, what do you think, right?
Yeah.
And I cannot even imagine the courage it must have taken for you to call up Wayne and sing it to him, basically a cappella with the tape running in the background. Oh,
Oh.
call Marcy. Okay, I'll do it again. Right?
Yeah.
I would have just been sweating. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
everybody would take that leap. And when he talks about it's not crowded on the extra mile,
Yeah.
Bobby, you're on the extra mile going, hey guys,
Yeah.
it's fine over here, right?
It's
It's
really good.
great.
And it's really interesting is that those moments where that stepping out and doing something you've never done, there's a fear underneath, but there's something magical that lifts you up out of it if you allow it to happen. And you
Mhm.
don't stomp it down with your mind. Stomp it
Yeah.
down with your
Don't talk
thoughts.
yourself out of it.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's something bigger inside of all of us. And
Because I
when
can
we say
tell you,
yes to it,
yes, it then things unfold. When he would say to me, "The money's all around you," my mind would think, "No, Wayne, the money's around you. You're the one that has the money around you. You understand that. You feel it." I would say that. I would say, I can't find it. I can't find it around me because I
yeah.
was I was looking at it here in my
Yeah.
hands. I
Mhm.
wasn't looking at it inside. I wasn't looking at it at a place where it was already within me, and
Yeah.
then it appeared physically. And when I work with people now, I tell them, look, what I learned from Wayne is I am it already. Now I'm it. I'm the singer that has the tape, that has the money, and I've done this over and over again in my life. And then I connect with it physically. It has to
Mm.
be here first
Yeah.
before I can magnetize to it in the physical. And
Mhm.
and he was absolutely right. If you look at his story, he bought up the second printing of that book, the Erroneous Zones, and they didn't want to print it. And he said,
Yeah.
"It's all right." And he'd go into town, and he'd say, "I'm going to be on a radio show." And he'd get on the radio show, and then he'd sell the books to the bookstores. I mean, he was just amazing. So he was fearless. He was
Yeah.
absolutely fearless. And
Yeah.
I learned that to try, just to try. And as you do that more and more, the interesting thing is when I got ready to do my second album, I thought, okay, I've done this before, and the thoughts, those thoughts, it came and it was like, okay, Bobby Branch, you did it once. Can you really do this again? Was it a fluke,
Now the pressure's on.
Yes. And so
Mm.
I was like, oh, really? Are you kidding me? And so I had to just jump over that hurdle, but it wasn't as
Mm.
big a hurdle as the first time. And then the lady that gave me the first $1,000, She said, don't even go looking for backers. I'm going to pay for the whole thing. You're the angel that sings. I'm the angel that funds you, and just don't even worry about it. Yeah. So every step of the way, the doors kept opening. And then, life moved on, and I sang a lot. And, it wasn't as easy then to get your music out. You had to go out and do it. And I had a young son, and I really didn't want to be gone all the time. So it kind of died down. I still sang at churches and seminars and things, but I didn't push as much. And I thought, I'll get a website. I'll put the music up on the website. I did this about 6 years ago because I didn't want it to just not be available. And then, of course, I met you. And you said, you should be on Spotify and you should be on Apple. And I was like, my mind technology-wise went, oh, my goodness, another one of those people that thinks outside the box. And, in the last month, that's what I've done, which is amazing to me. And it was more hurdles, but it's okay. It's okay. And I laugh. I talk to Wayne and I say, I really thought I was kind of done with this part, Wayne. and I hear him chuckling. Yeah, sure, Bobby.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure, you're done, honey.
Well, I got to tell you, first, for everyone who's listening, you heard it here first. Bobbe Branch's music is available now on Spotify and Apple, which is fantastic.
Which is great.
And I want to tell you that comes from Wayne. I could hear it when I was saying it to you. I was hearing it in his voice.
Wow.
The way that he'd be like, go sing on the steps. You want to sing? Go sing anywhere. Sing in front of the grocery store. Sing when you wake up in the morning. Sing on the telephone, right? Because that's how he was. And he would find somebody, he'd be like, you got to write a book. You need a book.
Oh,
you need
totally.
To, do this, right? And I heard him, and it encouraged me. And I had talked to Sarah Dion Brooks in season 1, and she wrote some music inspired by Wayne Dyer, and her music is on Spotify. And I thought, how do you get music on Spotify? Because I'm not a musician, right?
Right.
And I was like, So I do a couple Google searches, and I'm like, I think you could do this.
I
know. And I hear Wayne saying, tell her to get her music out there, right? Because this is, as far as I can see, one of the most current ways for people to find you.
Totally.
For it to keep circulating. And that's what he would want more than anything. So congratulations for taking that step and continuing to keep your music available where more of us are going to find you and listen to it. And so you shared some of your music with me, and we're going to play some at the end of this episode. So for anyone who's listening, stay tuned to the end. Now, I think we're going to play Happiness is the Way. The thing is, I really love that Icus song too. So
I know. It's very good.
So if we don't include that, definitely go check that out on Spotify.
It's the longest song. Icus is about 4 minutes and 41 seconds or something. Happiness is the Way was the first song I ever wrote. And it was a little shorter. It was a little more doable. Mm-hmm. Actually, he took it and played it on he was at an interview in Seattle, and he took Happiness is Away and played it one time when he was being interviewed. Yeah, he was so like cool. That. He would just do that. The first time I met him physically, we had been talking all summer. He came to do a barbecue. He came to do a speech, but he had a barbecue at one of his dear friends' Lee and Joe Leach. And he said, come to the barbecue. And so my son was about, I think he was 3, Michael was 3. And so I took my son and went to the barbecue, and I walked in, and he had all girls at that point. Sans had not been born. And I heard his voice in the living room, and I walked in, and I had not seen him. We just talked on the phone and sung and all. I hadn't gone out to Detroit yet. And I walked in the living room, and I said, hi, Wayne, I'm Bobbe Branch. He said, Bobby! And he came over, and he hugged me, and I said, and this is my son, Michael. And he said, Marcy, Marcy, come here right now. And she came in and he said, look, see this one? This is the kind we want. And I said, oh yay. And he said, no, you gotta look. See, do you see him? This is Michael. He's a boy. This is the kind we want next time. And then we got together. I think Summer was there and Serena was there and Sky, and we got together and we held hands and sang "Row, Row, Row Your Boat." And just had such a good time with the kids. And that was the first time I physically met him. And he was so much fun. He was so much fun. And then the next child was a boy.
Wow, you did something.
I did
What did
something.
you do, Bobby?
Ooh.
Magic.
Yeah. So I had a lot of good memories of having fun with him. And he was he left. I was surprised when he left. I was surprised he left so soon. And it's not soon, I'm sure. It was right on time. And I'm glad you're doing this. I'm glad you're keeping things alive because he gave a breadth of work that is timeless. It's timeless. It's for all the generations. So it's cool when we can keep it going. So I appreciate that you do that.
You're going to make me cry.
I know. Well, it's true. We all have our gift and our thing that we came to do. And I do believe that times in your life you meet certain people. And it's been like that for me most of my life. Like I've met the Dalai Lama. I've had time with him. I've studied with Byron Katie. I got to meet her. I've met Deepak Chopra. I met, do you remember Bernie Siegel? He was a doctor that wrote one of the first books about holistic medicine. I sang at the Holistic Medicine Conference in Seattle. And I sent him my music, and he said, your music is so healing. So it flows out of us and what you're doing. I've been listening to your podcasts and the last one on your NDE friend. I was like, wow, just you're very good at bringing people to talk about what their gifts are. And so Wayne's very surprised and happy that you're doing his legacy, I'm sure.
Thank you. He's over my shoulder for sure.
I bet.
Literally. Over my shoulder. Well, I'm just so excited to be part of the conversation about spirituality, honestly. Like this was my beginning. You'll see it when you believe it.
Yes.
This book just set me on that path, and I had never heard anything like this before, and it seemed almost scandalous, right?
Yeah.
To believe that you don't have limits.
Yeah.
To believe that you can connect to something bigger, and instead of saying, oh, it's too hard, or I'm too young, or I'm too old, or I don't have enough money, or whatever, instead you go, I'm going to connect to it.
Yep.
And he set me on that path, and it has shaped the way that I've lived my life, and it still does. And I find it very heartwarming that even though he's been gone for 6.5 years now.
I know.
I still feel his influence, and I'm still learning from him. And I'm so thankful for all the work that he did to put all this on paper and on audio. I mean, he created this multimedia library that generations can use. And he didn't invent these ideas.
No.
But he delivered them to us in a way that reached so many, and that's why I'm still so passionate about it. That's why I'm still talking about this. I mean, I've got 2 little kids at home too, right? And I could be doing something very different, but this is part of my path, and it's something that I feel called to do. So thank you for saying that you've enjoyed the episodes, and I am excited about the opportunity to keep talking to people. Yeah. And I feel like if I keep saying yes, Wayne's going to keep sending me people.
I
right?
think that's really true. I know it is. They just show up. They show up.
Yes.
Like
So
I
many
keep this. He
synchronicities.
used to talk about this living the wisdom of the Tao. He said, keep it in your
Hmm.
glove compartment. And
Yeah.
then anytime you stop someplace, just open it up and look at the thing for the day. When he
Yeah.
lived that the Tao for that time, he did it for a week at a time.
Yeah.
That was
For a
amazing what
year.
he did.
Hmm.
I know. And real magic. I was looking at his books because I have all his books. And your sacred self, and I remember, and the spiritual solution to things, and going to Assisi. I've been to Assisi with my daughter, and I've been in the same place he was, and it's magical there, and the connection he had to St. Francis, and just all the things. And then, you know, um, the inspiration book. Oh my goodness, that was
I
such a
love
good
that
book.
one too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then he wrote, I thought he was kind of done for a while, and I thought, what's he going to come up with next? And then he writes, I can see clearly now after the power
Mm.
of intention. And it's like, wow. I mean, wow. It just
Hmm.
was amazing. And when he wrote that, I was like, huh, why is he writing all his memoir? He's not done yet. And the last time I saw him, he was in Portland, and that was in May before he passed. And I felt like he was coming, and he was only coming to Portland. And I said, you need to go see him. And I was like, yep, I do. And so I went, and he had Anina Morjani was with him. And I
Was
was
that
like,
2015?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he, you could just see the light in him. There was a difference to his whole being. And yeah, I'm so glad I went because it was the last time I saw him, which was, I remember waking up and thinking, he's gone? The morning that I
Hmm.
found out, I was very surprised. And we all have our feelings when people leave us, but I don't feel like he left. I feel
Mm.
like
He
he's,
grew.
yeah, he's he's up that ladder to that place at the
Mhm.
top, and and he's looking down and he's doing a lot of good work, a lot of
Hmm.
good work, and he's just not here talking anymore, which he was so good at.
Yeah.
He
I know we
was.
miss that.
We do. We do. But we have his podcasts. We have so
Oh,
many
yeah.
things from him. Hay
His
House.
PBS videos, I love
Oh,
those.
I have a lot of those. They had packages you could buy, So I have
The whole
the
enchilada.
whole trip to Europe and all that. So I can see him
Yeah.
anytime I want to, which is
Yeah.
cool. Which is cool. And then
I love those.
his daughters are
Hmm.
doing a lot too, which is great. Of course. Of
Hmm.
course. So
Yeah,
I feel
Sage and
very,
Serena
yeah,
published
I feel,
the Knowing last year.
oh,
It's a great
lovely.
book.
Great book. And had so many stories of the Wayne that I knew, you know,
Hmm.
the Wayne that just really was there for so many people. He sent me things about, there's a lady that sent me something about a play. Go talk to her and see if you can connect with your music and her play. And we never did get connected, but he just did
Hmm.
that all the time.
Yeah. It makes me wonder about everything he was doing behind the scenes because we see him as this presumably quite busy guy, right? He's doing his Hay House radio show, he's touring around, he's giving keynote speeches, he's writing more books. He wrote over 40 books. It just seems like he was working all the time. He's recording these things, he's having, TV appearances and everything. And then the more I talk to people, the more I hear so many stories of, oh, Wayne used to send me letters or I'd get Christmas
Yes.
cards and he was sending books. And so I just imagine probably almost every day he would start out by sending people things.
Yes.
And it just makes me wonder, like how did he juggle all of that?
All of it.
And I think I know people would say he's always on his phone, so he was always thinking of ideas and talking to Reed Tracy and like, here's what we're gonna do next. And then he would be like with you, connecting people like, oh well, you should do this over here, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
connect you with this writer to help you get your book put out or whatever. Like he was
Yes.
really invested in other people's
Yeah.
success.
He connected me to Chloe Robinson, who is Chloe Patton now, and she lived in Seattle at the same time I did, and she knew
Hmm.
Lee Leach, and she had written a book. He loved her book, and so he promoted her book just the way he
Yeah.
promoted my music. He was just so giving. He was a networker.
Yes, I'd love that. I've never put that word to Wayne, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
He was a networker. He was a mover and shaker, and the way that he felt inspired, he would envision things and then he would go for it. And
Yes.
he had practiced coaching people on that from the time he was a professor, and
Yes.
he worked as a counselor for the students.
Yep.
And so, this went way back, and he never lost that. He never
Nope.
lost his passion for lifting people up and inspiring them. But like you said before, you're thinking, "Oh, well sure you're surrounded by money, Wayne, but I don't see the money around me." He
Yes.
must have gotten that sort of response all the
Oh,
time. But then I think he was teaching this so often, he was doing it himself.
yes.
That these were practices that he had been using, and it makes me wonder, when he'd get up in the morning, what was his intention?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, in the later days of his life, he really did a lot of giving. There was a lady at the bank who he knew had a lot of bills and things in her life, and he always talked to her, and he'd always slip
Mm-hmm.
her extra money. Every time he
Mm-hmm.
went, he'd slip her a couple $100 or 300 bucks. That was just him. He just did
Yeah.
that. He was just a giver because he knew that the universe was an abundant place, and it was abundant all the time, not
And we
just
don't get to
sometimes.
keep anything,
We
right?
don't.
Everything
We
comes, I
don't.
was just reading this in the book. Everything comes into our life for a temporary
Yep.
stay.
And it and
It
it
comes in and it
moves
goes
on.
out.
Yep. And
Yeah.
and he really did live that and do that all the time. And there so many people he would take time with and send things to. It was
Mm-hmm.
really true. And I mean, I sent him a little cassette. I never thought I'd hear from him. And it was like, whoo! It's like opening this wonderful river of love
Yeah.
and connection. Yeah.
Yeah. He saw that and he was like, "This is gold. I need to talk to her." And then he never let you
Yeah.
go.
Never let me go. It was just wonderful. It was really wonderful.
So when you two talked on the phone, were you always talking about sort of what you're creating and processes for that, or would you sort of chat about other things as well?
Oh yeah, we'd chat about, all kinds of things. I'd tell him, what I was one I'll have to look. There's one letter because I was very connected to a school in in Duval, that Wilderness Awareness School. And my son
Mm-hmm.
eventually went to high school there. And he said, I told him that over the phone one time, I really want to take kids into nature and I want to do things. And he said, let's get together and raise kids in the wilderness. Meanwhile, here's some ICUS books to hand out to people who you think might understand it. And so we talked about all kinds of things. And I love his book, What Do You Really, Really Want for Your Children? And
Yeah.
we talked a lot about how to raise children. And I ended up
Mm-hmm.
going to training and getting my Montessori certificate because I loved
Mm-hmm.
Montessori so much. And so all of that we used to talk about. And of course, he did books for kids. And he just viewed children as people, which I also viewed. Children are
Me
people. They're
too.
not little, pat them on the head. They're I
Mm-hmm.
used to look at my son sometimes and my daughter, and they'd look at me and I'd think, I think you know more than I think you know.
I'm certain of it.
And
Yeah.
they'd look at me and nod like, yes, mom. Yes, I do. And so all of that was in our conversations also, and how delightful it is to have children in your life, to have all possibilities in your life. And that was fun. It was just fun to have conversations with him. And he'd tell me
Yeah.
about the things he was writing or the places he'd been, and but the I kept I kept trying to figure out, how do you get to think like you, Wayne? I would ask
Yeah.
those questions. How did you get to think this way? I want to think more like that. I yearn to think that way. So give me things that will help me do that. And
He
he
used to
did.
say I want to learn to think like God thinks. But I find myself
Yes.
probably a lot of times I want to learn to think like Wayne thinks, and that's going to get me a
Yes.
little closer.
Yeah, yeah, it's really true. And and that there's no limits to what he thought was possible. And the thing that I think as his life progressed was the forgiveness pieces. And then he and Byron Katie got together. After I went to the school of Byron Katie, he and Katie did a weekend together. And he just thought she was amazing, that she'd ask questions and see if things were true. And so the two of them together were dynamic. But
Hmm.
it's interesting when your teachers get together with each other. And
Yeah.
they had connection. I had connection to each of them, and then they got together, and that was really cool. So I feel like he just kept opening to more and more and more. And then the lady from Rwanda, um,
Hmm. Immaculate Louisa.
immaculately, yes. I ended up in Rwanda later. I have a friend that
Wow.
that
Oh
lives
my
there.
gosh.
Her daughter moved there, and I went and did their wedding. She married a Rwandan. And so I've been to
Mm.
Rwanda. I've been through the whole thing. And
Wow.
yeah, how our connections of the places I've been and the places he was really helpful in telling
Hmm.
people about never ceases to, like, of course. Of course. I
Of
never thought I'd go
course.
to Africa and
Hmm.
sit with gorillas. Oh my goodness.
Mm.
I've sat, with silverbacks and, like 5 feet from me. No zoo, and never thought I would do that. So you never know what you're going to do in life. And so now my feeling is I'm just open to whatever happens.
Yeah.
Because all kinds of magical things happen all the time. When I went to fly to Rwanda the first time, I'd never flown to Africa. I had my passport and my shots and all of these things. And when I got to Wayne talks about one time where he was going to fly someplace from Florida to someplace north, and there was some kind of hurricane, and they canceled his flight. And so he went, and he loves to tell this story. It's on one of his tapes, I think. And he said, I went to the lady at the counter and I said, I have to get to this city, and I have a lot of books I have to take with me. And the lady said, Dr. Dyer, we cannot do this for you. We can, there are no flights going out. And he said, yeah. Okay, just walk through those doors over there and go up the stairs out through the duck pond and find me an eagle. And then have them come back, and then we'll talk, because she said there's no way. So she went through the doors and she came back with her supervisor, and he said, so here's where I got to get. And he said, she looked at me and she said, okay, Dr. Dyer, we can do that. We have a flight, blah, blah, blah. And of course, we'll take your books. We can put them in first class, and we're going to get you there. And he said, see, you have to ask for an eagle. You cannot talk to the people that are in the duck pond, because the duck pond is there. You got to go for the eagle. So I'm at the counter, and I give them my passport and everything, and they say, "Oh, yes, Mrs. Branch, we're going to take you down here." I said, "Is there something wrong with my ticket?" They said, "No, no. And they came down here and they said, this was on Emirates airline. It's the first time I'd flown. Said, we're going to upgrade you to business class. And and it was my birthday, like in 4 days or something. And I said, of course you are. Thank you so much. This is my first flight to Africa, and I was going to Dubai, and then from Dubai to Rwanda. And I got to be in first class and have champagne and the whole thing. And I thought,
Beautiful.
thank you, Wayne. So
Of course.
you just never know. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
So I expect good things to come, and sometimes they just don't arrive on the timeline I have.
That's a good way of putting it. It's
they-
just not here yet.
It's not here yet. And so that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I tell my clients a lot, you need to remember, oh, I forgot. Things always work out for me. And they go, okay. And then, another one that I love to tell them is, you really can't do this wrong.
I love that.
And
I like to tell people that you can't not be spiritual. Because you are a spiritual being having a human experience. And I feel like people label, oh, this is human or this is ego and this is spirit. But really, you are a spiritual being, so you can't do it wrong. Like,
right.
You are already spiritual. You don't need to have a certain meditation practice or guru or whatever to become spiritual. You already are spiritual, but having an awareness, right? That's what spirituality is, an understanding that there's more than just what we see or hear or can pick up with our five senses. I'm certain we have more than five, but we'll leave it at five. When you can see that we're more than that, I think it enriches our life. But we're here to be human, So
oh, absolutely.
Embrace it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even the ones where you stub your toe, I laugh now. I get upset about things and then I go, oh, that was good, Bobby. That was really good. That felt good, didn't it? Okay. And now what are we going to do? Let's move forward this way, or let's just sit. Maybe you just need to sit for a minute, honey.
Yeah.
And so then I sit because I don't have all the answers. The cool thing is I know the answers will come.
Mm-hmm.
They always
you can't
seem
solve
to show
a problem. Up. You can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So I love what you were saying in your story about how all of this music came to be in your life, was that, you weren't finding the answers, and then you sort of sit down and you get quiet and you sort of let go and you surrender. And then, something that you wouldn't have wrestled your way into, comes into your space. You go, aha, there's another way.
I have been in a place where I had no answers and I really thought I needed some because I was grappling with something. And I'd be and I'd be walking out, the beautiful Northwest on some path and I would just stop and I would think, all right, look, if anybody isn't busy around me, could you just help me out with this and give me an idea? And then I just walk forward, and darn if an idea wouldn't pop into my head, and I'd think, that is a great thing to do. And it happens all the time. I just have to get out of my own way and allow it to come. And Wayne was my first teacher at that. He just really said, Bobby, it's there. And I was like,
yeah,
I want to believe you, Wayne. And so I had to really see it and believe it.
I didn't get that from anybody but Wayne.
Yeah.
I didn't get that from anybody. I got a lot of great things from a lot of people.
Me too.
But that message, that more is possible, came to me from him. and I'm going to carry that through the rest of my life.
Well, and I remember when he told me the name of the book. He said, "Oh yeah, I'm writing a new book and you're in it and you'll see it when you believe it." And I was like, "Of course. Of course."
And
Because
do
of
you
course
know
the other idea was taught to
was
me.
backwards? Yeah,
Yes.
the one that we were taught was backwards. And do you know he fought with his publishers about this book? Did
Oh,
you
I
know that?
didn't know that.
Yes,
No.
so they Artie Pine, his literary agent,
Right.
said, "Oh, wait, okay, he'd already had 3 or 4 books out. Said, "Oh, I've got a deal all lined up for you. You're going to write a book about sex, you're going to write a book about money, and then you're going to write a book about I don't know." So it was all like ego based, right? And he's like,
Right.
"This is perfect. It's a lot of money. They're going to pay you millions of dollars. Just, it's all ready." And Wayne goes, "No, actually, I had another idea." And then he brings the title. "You'll see it when you believe it." And they're like, what does that even mean? What is that? They were not happy with the title. The publisher was not happy with the title. And also, like, he dealt with a lot of pushback. They wanted it to sound more academic. And he wanted
Yes.
it to sound conversational. He wanted it to be.
Yes.
So he held this vision and he fought for it. So, and can you imagine if in, what year was this published? 1989?
I think
Yes,
so.
1989.
Yep.
If he had, instead of writing You'll See It When You Believe It, his first spiritual book with Bobbe Branch in it, if he had written a book about, the joy of sex and how to make more money and all of that, he would have been just a completely different person. He would have had a different
Totally.
career. That music that was in him wouldn't have found its way out because it was still evolving.
Yeah.
Still evolving.
Was.
But he had the courage to fight them and be like, "No, this is what I want to do
What did
next."
he call it when he was at? Oh, he used to call it something when he was. Oh, kids. He would say you're not a squeaky wheel, but something like that. And he said, "I was like that my whole life. I was
Scurvy
always
elephant.
scurvy elephant." That's it. Yes, the scurvy elephant. I hadn't thought about that. But he was. He was the scurvy elephant that thought of different ways to do things. You can't just do it that way. You got to do it. No, there's a whole bunch of things we can do. And that's from, I do believe, his childhood and how he just figured it out, how to
Mm-hmm.
survive. And, you know, er, he said God used to say, "I put you in that little orphanage so that you get your little ass kicked and then you'd learn how to do things independently."
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
it's really
because
true.
he said, "I imagined myself before I was born. I had this conversation with God. God says, 'What do you want to do?' Wayne says, 'I want to teach self-reliance,'" right?
Yeah,
Got that from Emerson. "I
yeah.
want to teach self-reliance." And God says, "Well, okay, you better get your little ass into an orphanage," right? He saw it as,
Yep.
what did I gain from this? How did this shape me? How can I use this in my life
Yeah,
instead of, woe is me, I had these hardships when
that's
I
right.
was a kid, which so many people do. So he was so big on no excuses.
That's
No
right.
excuses. And I imagine him in his counseling practice in those early years,
Oh,
and people probably come in and go, "Oh, Wayne, you just don't know. I can't do this because, and woe is me, and it's just so hard." And he would be like, "Okay, we're going to practice turning this around of not being a
yeah.
victim." And
Yeah,
and even though he got into the spiritual stuff and got a little woo woo and whatever, right? He still carried that sort of
he did.
gumption.
Yeah.
But I'm planning to do a whole episode about the necessity of being a scurvy elephant,
Oh, I love it. I love it.
because
There are
I
so
think
many
that
out there.
you have to be willing to disappoint people. You have to be willing to go your own way in order to be self-guided, self-reliant, listen to the beat, of your own drum and do things your way. You have to be um, sort of bold and rebellious in
Hmm.
order to live a life that is of your calling, to play the music that's in you. You need to sort of not conform.
That's right. That's right.
and I think it needs to be talked about. So I'm planning to do it. That's going to be a
Yay,
fun
that'll be a
one.
fun one. Oh my
Yeah, so
goodness.
I started a Patreon page this year with season 2, and I have 3 tiers that you can sign up for. And the first one is the Scurvy Elephant Fan Club,
Oh,
right?
I love it.
And the second one is you get access to all the full videos of the interviews that I'm doing like this, and that's watch the full videos. But if you sign up for the third one, that is the whole enchilada. And you get that and more. We're gonna do Zoom calls. I've got a
Oh,
mug with my painting of this is my painting of Wayne Dyer from the 5th anniversary of his death. I painted that, and
oh,
I keep it here with me. So yeah, I
wow.
turned that into a mug, so I got a bunch of stuff. But I was definitely thinking about Wayne when I was putting those together.
Oh, I
Scurvy
love
elephant,
it.
and the whole enchilada. So
That
yeah.
he
So
would
anyone who
love
hasn't
that.
joined, yeah, come join us. It's going to be so much fun. I've had so many people asking me about Zoom calls, and we're going to be doing it
Oh,
through
fun.
there, so we can chat, and I
Talk
can see
more
your
about things.
faces, right? Because I do
Yes,
I do Facebook Lives sometimes, but I don't get to see people's faces, right? It's just the
I know.
comments, so it's going to be fun. Yeah.
Yay.
All right. So I want because you knew Wayne so well, and I can feel his energy with you, and I feel your
Yeah.
your energy is just beautiful. I'm just going to say it again. Wayne
Hmm.
was right. Right? He said you are a spectacularly alive, higher consciousness person who's a true joy to be around. I second that very much.
Hmm.
But I want to
Thanks.
ask you, if Wayne were here today, what advice do you think he would give us?
Oh, yeah. He would say, you need to remember that love is the glue and the thing to move from. I remember him talking about, with all that's going on in the world, love is the only way to be for something, not against something. I think it was either it was when the people were kidnapped, the Americans, and were in Iran when Carter was president, or one of those times, or there was a bombing in Iran, or one of those places, and a lot of Americans at the embassy were hurt. He said at the very same time that that was going on, there were 1 million people doing a peace march at Lourdes in France. And he said all the press was about that. It wasn't about the 1 million people for peace. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think what he would say is be a light where you are. And I tell my clients this all the time, be the light in your circle. And I tell them, look, if you're not a light in your circle, I'm never going to get to all those people. And so I get to you and I ask them to commit to themselves and becoming their light and then giving the light to others in their circle. And I think that's, when he said love, period, in the last
Mm-hmm.
days of his life, he didn't
Mm-hmm.
just mean that as a thing. It's just love, period. That's the only thing that's going to change everything. And, Thich Nhat Hanh's one of my favorite people, and we just lost him. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't lose him. We lost his body. He says
Yeah.
we are his continuation. And he always said, you're all of it. You're the you're the soldier in Ukraine and you're the soldier in Russia and you're all of it. And so just we're all one. We're all connected. There's no
Mm-hmm.
like borders and separations. It's all up here in the mind. And so just be the love that you can be wherever you are. And when you forget that, then remind yourself. I forget it. And then I say, "Oh, Bobby, you forgot it again, honey. Remember,
Mm.
love is it. Yes,
Yeah.
love is all there is. And
Beautiful.
it's hard to see from your mind sometimes because it's the heart,
Yeah. Move from your head into your heart.
down to your heart.
Changes everything.
Yeah. So I think that's what he'd say.
Mm-hmm. What's the best way for people to reach you?
They can go to my website and look at bobbebranch.com. It will tell them what I do. And then for email, go to Bobbe Branch, Bobbe Branch, at AOL.com. And they'll get a response from me. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Wonderful. And your music is now on Spotify and Apple, thanks
It
to a little nudge from
is.
Wayne and me as the
And you.
messenger. Wonderful. I'm
Bless
so
you.
excited to check that out. So we're going to play your first song, Happiness is the Way, right after this episode, so don't hang up.
Okay.
But go check out Icus because that song it just moves me to tears. There's something about the way that you captured the heart of his relationship to Icus and what she meant. And I think that's something a lot of people are not aware of. What a big book that was for him, what a relationship that was for him, what that story meant to him. So I guess that's a beautiful song. So check that out, but we will play Happiness is the Way after this episode.
Yay. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for spending this time with me today.
It was a delight.
It has just been, and we both live in the Seattle area, so we need to keep in touch because
we do, and I look forward to that. I really do.
Yes, and I want to see you do music live next time you get an opportunity to do that. That would be really fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I would like to do that again. You know, COVID has kind of stopped that, but we're going to do it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where there's a will, there's a way. Things are changing. Things are opening up, hopefully, and we'll see what comes. We're open to anything, right? Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your stories of Wayne and your memories and your incredible journey of courage to get your music out and have all these adventures in your life. And people are really going to get a lot from all of this. And it brings us closer to Wayne. You know, your memories, it's like we get a peek through your eyes and your heart of what it felt like to be friends with Wayne all those years. It feels
really good to tell those stories. Yeah.
Well, this is the right place to do it because we got all the fans right here at the Wayne Dyer Wisdom Community. Yeah.
So good.
Oh, these are my people. I love it.
Yeah.
So thank you again. And for all our listeners, thank you for following Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life and telling your friends about it. The full video for this episode will be available for my subscribers on Patreon. You can get that link and more details about this podcast at nadiadelacruz.com. Stay tuned after the episode for Happiness is the Way. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Namaste.